This man opens his eyes to see his hand whole with all 5 fingers, thinking the past 25 years in hell must have been just a dream. The moment he comes to his senses, he dashes out the door to see for himself, flinging open his daughter's door and frantically calling for Somin. She's sleeping soundly in her bed, a peaceful sight that makes him doubt his own eyes as memories from 25 years ago feel like they happened just yesterday. A scene of utter devastation flashes before him, Nam Gung gritting his teeth as he clutches Somin's tiny hands while she dangles precariously from a skyscraper, her eyes welling with tears of terror, 2 arrows embedded in Nam Gung's left arm, and at that moment all he could do was pray, "Oh God, please don't let anything happen if I die, at least save my daughter." But his prayer went unanswered as a colossal maw rose from the earth, and a second later its razor-sharp teeth snapped down on Somin. As if she were prey, the only thing left was her 5 little fingers still gripping his hand back in the present. Nam Gung is clutching his daughter's hand tearfully, feeling its warmth. Somin sleepily opens her eyes and calls for her dad, but Nam Gung immediately leaves, not wanting his daughter to see him like this. He stands stunned outside the door, and a second later his legs grow weak, and he collapses sobbing with the tears of gratitude. "Thank you, God, I'm so truly grateful." But this is merely the calm before the storm. He's facing this war for the second time. For the past 25 years, he's grown accustomed to living and fighting alone. But now, can he truly protect Somin? Nam Gung immediately pushes that anxiety aside. He has to succeed this time, even if it means sacrificing his life to prepare for the upcoming war. Nam Gung checks his status, and to his astonishment his powers have not vanished. Using his soul art skill, Nam Gung gets a system message: "A spirit is looking at you," and he glances at a picture of his happily smiling wife. He murmurs, "Sua, is that really you?" And in that moment, Nam Gung feels the familiar warmth of the one he loves, fueling his determination to walk this endless path once more. In just 3 days, the gates will open, but even before then, 8 people are already aware of their arrival. They are the 8 martial stars, hailed as the world's saviors, but with his memories of the future, Nam Gung can snatch all of their rewards and achievements for himself, and now it is time for him to begin his monopoly. With his 25 years of veteran knowledge, Nam Gung descends into a basement. His eyes fall upon a decrepit old restaurant. He pushes open the door, and it groans loudly as if it is about to fall off its hinges. In such a dusty and dilapidated place, an old man is sitting casually in the middle of the room. He speaks probingly, "And what wind blew you in here?" "I am here to purchase some materials, Yasa." The name has barely left Nam Gung's mouth before he is suddenly grabbed by a massive hand and slammed forcefully into a wall. From the dust and rubble, a hulking figure with 2 horns slowly emerges. The old man has transformed into a demon with glowing, sunken eyes. "Hey, what the hell are you?" According to Nam Gung's memories, the disciples' trial is scheduled to take place right here. Yasa is suspicious, wondering if he was sent by someone, but then he immediately remembers that according to the tabloids, the selections upstairs are still ongoing. But Nam Gung calmly states the obvious: "If you want to claim a seat that no one else can, you have to be the first one here." Yasa is speechless. It sounds ridiculous, but is also completely persuasive. Suddenly, it's as if he's had an epiphany. Yasa roars with laughter. "You bastard! You're that legendary son of a gun, the Regressor, who slayed 666 high-rank demons." Nam Gung remains silent, and Yasa feels like he now has the upper hand. "So you're trying to act all badass, huh? You think we're clueless, but we know everything." Yasa only knows. Nam Gung has distorted the timeline. He assumes our protagonist is in trouble and came to him to fix his mistake, but this place is the chessboard of the constellations. Nam Gung messing up their game will only make them angry. "Get your hand off me, that's disgusting." Just as Nam Gung finished speaking, 3 daggers sank deep into Yasa's right arm, causing him to scream in agony. Nam Gung coolly dusted off his clothes, like a total boss. He had planned to sever the arm that touched him, but since he still had a use for the guy, he let it be. "You bastard." Yasa, having picked up a human curse word, immediately tried it on Nam Gung. Nam Gung then began to enlighten him. In reality, Yasa knows absolutely nothing. His ability to regress is only because his supreme beings allowed it. Does he really think those so-called gods would get outraged or do anything to him? If so, he would have kicked the bucket 25 years ago. Hearing Nam Gung talk trash about the idols he worshipped, Yasa charged forward in a rage only to hear a crisp smack One of his cheeks instantly turned bright red before he even knew what the heck was going on. Nam Gung graced his other cheek with a slap. He was just warming up his hand muscles, while asking, "Is your head just for show? Don't you get what a regressor is? It means I've already cleared the mission." Yesa was slapped so hard he forgot his own name. Only then did he realize the hand that just fondled his cheek was the same one that had slain 666. 666 high-level demon heads to live is to consume, and a yaksha like him feeds on the fear of other living beings. But now he was afraid of a mere human. If this kept up, he wouldn't be able to take it. Yasa grew anxious, but the more he worried, the weaker he became. He lost his powers and reverted to his infant form. CEO-type Nam Gung achieved his goal and smirked. Then he informed the now chibi Yasa of two conditions. First, before the gate to hell opens, his clan is forbidden from killing humans. Second, he sought him out to form an alliance with the Yaksha clan. Hearing this, Yasa's head spun. Could it be the day had finally come for his Prince Charming to come and sweep him off his feet to completely manipulate him? Nam Gung revealed Yasa's true identity as the second in command of the Yaksha clan, Gizu. Only by doing this would Gizu abandon any thought of assassinating him before the gate opened. Gizu trembled, wondering how he could possibly know his true name. Nam Gung looked at him and smirked because we are bound by fate. Those words left Gizu completely stunned. Impossible. What kind of fated connection involves someone as villainous and cunning as this Nam Gung guy? Gizu shouted indignantly, "Are you implying I was once your slave or something?" Nam Gung narrowed his eyes, his gaze a mix of cold indifference and pure ice, staring at Gizu and shutting him up instantly. Experiencing this for the first time made him curse internally. Defeated Gizu had no choice but to pull out his inventory bag. "So I'll be a slave. What's the big deal?" As the bag opened, an info panel popped up in front of Nam Gung. He fell into deep thought. This was the item shop for followers of the Constellations. It had everything from defensive gear to physical and magical attack items. The only catch was the prices were absolutely insane. The currency here was demon heads, and you only got one head per kill. At this rate of spending, even 1,000,000 heads would feel like chump change. Shopkeeper Gizu looked judgmentally at the broke protagonist before him. Even the cheapest item currently on sale was something he couldn't afford. Nam Gung pointed to a particular item piquing Gizu's curiosity. Then he said something that made the air freeze over. "Just give this to me." In his several hundred years of existence, Gizu had never met anyone this shameless. If he still had his power, he would have given him something all right, a couple of fists to the face. "Are you illiterate?" Nam Gung snapped. On the information scroll of the Yaksha clan was a note saying this was a priceless 10-point gift meant only for a sworn brother. Gizu was furious. "Sworn brother, my foot? What kind of sworn brother stabs 3 swords into your hand the very first time you meet, and now tries to steal his belongings in the dead of night?" Now he understood why this scheming capitalist was the sole survivor. Nam Gung remained silent, saying nothing as he gently reached out and pulled 2 of the swords from Gizu's hand, causing the little yaksha to spurt blood in agony, and he called them sworn brothers. Nam Gung nonchalantly said, "I'm just helping you pull these daggers out." Gizu felt helpless, wondering who the real yaksha demon was here. He had to respect the guy's sheer audacity. "Take this, Nam." Gung tossed him 2 thick wads of Korean, one worth 20 million. He even promised to give him another 80 million won if he did his job well. 20 million won. Did he really think he could bribe him with this paltry sum? It should at least be 20 million demon heads within 3 days. Besides, once the Hell Gate opens, this pile of scrap paper will be completely useless. It's no different than giving him spirit money to burn. Nam Gung shot him a cold glance. "Trust me, you're going to need this. In 2 years, it will save your life in the darkest of nights." Gizu was stunned. What was he talking about? Nam Gung was using his knowledge from 25 years of surviving in the abyss to persuade him as a regressor. He knew what would become most valuable in the future. Money. Gizu's conviction began to waver. To a demon like him, this pile was just a few pieces of paper. "What if you're tricking me?" he asked, still full of doubt. Nam Gung was speechless if words wouldn't work. Then he would use actions. He pulled the 3rd and final dagger from Gizu's hand and calmly said, Suit yourself. In 2 years, you'll wish you had agreed. Gizu gritted his teeth through the pain seething with rage. Who could even call this guy human? To him, this man was worse than those Naga scumbags. Nam Gung pressed his advantage. I've heard about the Naga as well. Gizu realized he couldn't argue with this master manipulator any longer and handed over the scroll. I'll use this to store a few things. Gizu sulkily turned to pick up the money Nam Gung had thrown down. Behind him, Nam Gung was still rambling on, which only made him more weary. After picking up the cash, he stood up with a sigh. Just then, Nam Gung was chanting some ancient runes when suddenly space itself fractured like glass. Shards embedded themselves in his body, injuring him in several places, but Nam Gung paid it no mind. Now I'm going to meet one of the 8 stars. As they stepped into the new dimension, an invisible pressure made it impossible for either of them to resist. Above them, a single blood-red eye appeared staring. Intently down at the 2 intruders, a deep abyssal corridor materialized before them. As Gizu followed Nam Gung, his eyes darted around. The area, he might be a demon, but his secret fear was the darkness, especially when he was with a sly fox like Nam Gung. He cautiously glanced over at Nam Gung, only to be terrified by the look in his eyes. At this point, he was more afraid of Nam Gung than the darkness itself. Nam Gung wondered why the little demon was tagging along behind him. Gizu stubbornly replied that he wanted to see how he would send the target to the afterlife. Gizu had another question that he finally had a chance to voice. He knew Nam Gung intended to steal the apostle's special privilege here, but what would happen to that apostle? Everything that was rightfully his was being stolen by you. Don't you feel any guilt for your thievery? No. Nam Gung fell silent for a moment, his gaze hardening at the mention of that demonic apostle Choi Hoi Su. Is one of the 8 stars. He commands countless undead and is practically immortal on par with Anet, the strongest of the 8 stars. But he is nothing but trash that needs to be exterminated. A menace to all of humanity because he's a psychopathic murderer. The title of Undead Legion. His lifestyle partly revealed his work of collecting corpses and experimenting on the living to create premium reanimated bodies. Nam Gung was one of his intended victims, which is why he felt no remorse for his actions against the man. He wasn't in the wrong, fate was. Gizu also felt a chill at the gruesome achievements of that guy Choi Huo, and he warned Nam Gung that he should be more careful because no matter how great he was in his past life right now, he was just a normal person. If he knew who he was messing with, he would wish he'd never done it. But Nam Gung obviously knew the man had tormented him for 18 years, but he was no longer the man he used to be. An uninvited guest's voice echoed from the depths. The 2 had entered the manor of the 7 Serpents Tamer. Gizu, why did you bring a human here? Gizu stammered, and broke into a cold sweat. He wasn't the one leading. Nam Gung had threatened him. This place was only for apostles to set foot in. But Nam Gung was not one of the chosen. He confidently declared that not choosing me was your greatest mistake. You should have chosen me from the start. As soon as the words left his mouth, a pitch-black eye above opened wide, staring at him. Gizu then snitched, My lord, he is the regressor, the murderer who killed 666. 666 high-ranking demons, that being. Realized Nam Gung was the one who had flipped their entire game board. That made him even less worthy to be an apostle, but Nam Gung still confidently asserted that he was better than that guy Choi Huo. The black eye judged him in silence. Suddenly, his most painful memory returned as clear as day. Before his eyes was the moment Nam Gung watched helplessly as Suen fell into a monster's mouth. That painful scene kept replaying like a broken record, causing him to slowly lose consciousness. Suddenly, a hand woke Nam Gung. He snapped awake, calling out Sue's name, his wife. Heh. The regressor who once shifted the timeline is to become one of my disciples, an arrogant voice, tinged with a hint of mockery, rang out as it had trapped him in his memories. Nam Gung slowly opened his eyes, glancing through the glass prison that held him then. He built up momentum and leaped, stabbing straight into the center of that pitch-black eye. Absolutely brutal. Gizu watched from the side. His jaw dropped. He had never seen his boss get stabbed so easily like a block of tofu. Nam Gung denied being a disciple of that demon. From the center of the wound, a powerful gust of wind blew out a level 13 gale, pushing him back to the ground. The being spoke up praising the attack, Nam Gung's surprise attack and his power. But just as he predicted, even a supreme being doesn't know everything, including the source of his power. However, this power was the very proof of his regression. Consider it a reward for you after surviving all those years in that hell. With a snap of its fingers, a purple flame erupted surrounding the two of them. Its gaze from above scanned the person standing before it. Tell me the reason you obtained that power. Nam Gung said that Choi Ho had passed this power down to him. These words made the master of the Seven Serpents find it interesting. Who would have thought that the regressor was his devoted slave? It closed its eye in thought. A man who could kill 666 high-ranking demons. Who would have thought I'd meet such a reckless fool? But before him, there was another reckless one, the Sun Moon Spectator. But that was just a rumor. Looking at Nam Gung, it didn't care whether he was a regressor or something else. Its judgment was absolute. It had chosen Choi Ho, so there was no possibility of it being a mistake. Not a chance, Nam Gung said bluntly. You know what a regressor needs, right? This statement made the master of the Seven Serpents' face darken in annoyance. Nam Gung continued his analysis to want to regress. I must be the sole survivor. All the other disciples perished before I did. I'm not here today to beg to be your disciple, but to give you, the seventh master, a chance to claim me as yours. And if you fail to see the benefit that I bring, then this opportunity will go to the other supreme beings, and the first person to die by my hands will be your disciple. Hearing this outrageously bold interview from Nam Gung, even Gizu got nervous. Who shows up to a job interview with an attitude like they own the place? Are you threatening me? I could kill you on the spot. You know, the seventh master angrily warned. No one had ever dared to so brazenly stand before him and speak such words. Why should he choose Nam Gung, the one who could become an enemy to all the supreme beings? Because that's the only way you'll win this damn game, Nam Gung calmly replied. Having survived for 25 years in that hellhole, he knew that under the laws of the supreme beings he could never be a threat to them. Even though this regression was different, he was certain he would remain the king of tenacity. I like that attitude. The seventh master stood up and summoned Choi Ho. Shoo. The guy was just chilling at home with his headphones on when he was suddenly teleported to this place. Hearing his name called, he looked up bewildered, but that would be the last sound he'd ever hear before being sent to the afterlife under a giant foot. I'll switch disciples. Witnessing this gory scene and the master's decisive action, Nam Gung was somewhat stunned. The seventh master had acknowledged him. A magic circle materialized beneath Nam Gung's feet, and from now on he was a disciple of the Serpent clan with the special privilege of teleporting to their treasury. Nam Gung grinned with satisfaction. He could loot this vault to his heart's content. The seventh master led him to the gate of 3 poisons, telling him to take whatever he wanted. He would cover it all. As for their upcoming festival, the other disciples would have to bring people here anyway. Nam Gung never imagined that the hell humanity was experiencing was just some Halloween party for them. The seventh master then finally revealed his name was Do to make things easier. Nam Gung seared the name Do into his memory. This was just the beginning. The door opened. Gizu, who was waiting outside, felt his heart pound and his legs tremble just from looking. Yet those two walked in as casually as if they were going to the restroom. When the door slammed shut, he heaved a sigh and plopped down on the ground, looking quite pitiful. But who cares? After what felt like a long dream, Nam Gung's voice woke him up, telling him to follow. Both of them stepped out of the gate of 3 poisons and returned to the old hallway Gizu had lit. He was curious about what Nam Gung and the master were doing in that soundproof room. Nam Gung raised his hand, summoning the item he had just acquired, a legendary-grade crown of King Lerich version 1.0. As the crown of the greatest and most arrogant king in history, it grants its wielder immense power. From it, however, one must also pay the price for such arrogance, a cost paid in the life force of the living. But if one of the undead were to use it, they would gain tremendous power. After reading its item description, Gizu was totally floored. He couldn't understand if Nam Gung was even thinking straight, choosing an item meant for the dead. He looked at him suspiciously, and just then their eyes met, which terrified him. Gizu let out an awkward laugh, praising him for his keen eye. Despite not understanding anything, Nam Gung ignored the little goblin and told him to show him his inventory bag. Gizu started sweating bullets. The customer is always right, but this customer was broke as a joke and didn't have a single skull to his name. But here's 100 million skulls. Nam Gung immediately presented the payment, leaving Gizu utterly bewildered. Realizing something, he shouted, "You mean from the master of the seven sages?" "That's right," Nam Gung casually admitted. Gu couldn't believe his eyes. That guy, Do, is a total cheapskate. Whenever he asked for anything, Do made him pay a price even for a single toothpick. This time, Nam Gung took a whole 100,000 heads, so the price he had to pay must have been insane. Nam Gung smiled a cryptic smile and explained I didn't have to pay a thing. Not only that, Du even gave me money because he was worried I'd become a target for other followers. Instead, I was given a quest on par with a legendary quest to kill 666 demons. Inside the quest scroll was a red wax seal, marking it as a hidden legendary grade quest, the incarnation of the seven sages, but as for the details, only the system's creator would know, so even if Gyu asked, he wouldn't get an answer, seeing him spaced out. In a daze, Nam Gung reminded him to pull out the dimensional pouch so he could do some shopping. Gyu frantically took out the bag and, based on Nam Gung's request, presented 2 rare-grade swords for him to choose from the Widow's Eye and the Executioner's Cleaver reading. The item descriptions for the 2 swords gave Nam Gung a headache. All that fairy tale lore was completely useless. In short, it's a cursed sword, that's why it's so cheap, Gizu said casually, while busy rearranging the items in his bag. Nam Gung decided to take the Executioner's Cleaver because the Widow's Eye looked way too flashy with the leftover heads. He decided to buy a pouch. And after reading its ridiculously long origin story spanning over 4,000 years, he had to admit that items with a deeper history were always the cheapest. Gizu rubbed his hands together, scheming. This currency was nothing. Becoming friends with Nam Gung was the real prize. Maybe he could even score a few 100,000 more heads from that cheapskate. Nam Gung sheathed his sword and asked Gizu for the time, and he replied it was 3:00 in the afternoon. But the corridor was strangely deserted. It turned out they were inside a magical barrier. After leaving the barrier, the 2 of them re-entered the bustling crowd. Gu disguised himself as a gray-haired old man again, and followed Nam Gung. He didn't know what he was planning. He had just bought a sword, so he was definitely up to something. Was he going to start hunting the followers right now? While Gizu was staring at him with a judgmental look, Nam Gung blurted out something with a beaming face. "I have to go pick up my daughter." What the heck? This demon slayer had a wife and a child? Meanwhile, he, a demon, was still single as a Pringle, watching Nam Gung wave goodbye and walk away. He realized the man was on a completely different level. 2 days before the Hellgate was set to open, Nam Gung spent quality time with his beloved daughter Somin, taking her for a walk around the city, going shopping, and even playing Free Fire with her. This was a rare moment of peace in his chaotic life, the calm before the storm. "Today's the day you talked about, right, Dad?" Somin asked curiously as she put on her shoes, organizing her pile of gear. In her backpack, the little girl wondered if all this equipment would even be enough for survival. Nam Gung was surprised. He hadn't expected her to actually believe his words. Somin replied nonchalantly, "Of course, I always have your back, Dad." Nam Gung looked at her with pride, and then the 2 of them, father and daughter, held hands and set off on their journey. At the Daejeon National Cemetery, Cho Eung-hun gave Nam Gung a formal military salute. He patted Myung-hun in greeting after not seeing him for 25 years, though of course only Nam Gung was aware of that fact. So-min was asleep in the car, tired from the long drive from Seoul. The 2 men sat on a wooden bench sipping coffee. Nam Gung had sought him out today for a specific purpose. He spoke gravely to Myung-hun. "What if the apocalypse is about to happen? Would you believe me, whether you believe it or not?" Just seeing Myung-hun's contorted face as he spat out a mouthful of coffee was enough to tell he had burst out laughing. So it turned out their serious captain knew how to joke after all. "I wish I were joking," Nam Gung said with a tense face as he stared into his coffee cup. This attitude reminded Myung-hun that his boss never joked around. Suddenly, a powerful tremor accompanied by immense pressure descended, causing chaos all around. Myung-hun shot up in a panic while Nam Gung remained silently seated, just gazing at his reflection in the coffee, which made him extremely anxious. "Sir, hurry, we need to get out of here." But what happened next made Myung-hun's eyes widen in utter astonishment. Nam Gung summoned his executioner's blade in the most badass way imaginable, and then rose to his feet. He declared, "I will slaughter every last one of them." Squawking sounds erupted from the goblin horde as they descended to massacre the people below. Everyone around them was running for their lives, yet these two just stood there. Myung-hun was burning with anxiety. He wondered if Nam Gung was having some kind of hero delusion standing there with a glowing sword. "Myung-hun, this time, let's survive together, okay?" Nam Gung turned back to look at him with eyes full of affection and determination. At that exact moment, the goblin horde charged toward Nam Gung. Terrified, Myung-hun screamed his name. Nam Gung effortlessly cleaved a goblin in two with his newly unboxed sword, and its head fell. It landed with a thud at Myung-hun's feet, leaving him stunned. Before he could even process it, Nam Gung told him to go to the car and get Shin. Hun was confused, but when the plea came from Nam Gung's lips, he swallowed hard and shouted with grim determination. "Yes, sir." Myung-hun's military instincts finally kicked in, and he immediately ran to find Shin. Nam Gung stayed behind alone, slaying goblins with his sword. He glanced up at the sky where a massive blue eye watched over everything. It was also the source from which the goblins were being dropped like an unyielding mountain. No matter how many Nam Gung cut down, more would just appear. Goblins poured down like a flood. Nam Gung recalled his conversation with Do Hyuk, who had been preaching the ideology of the Seven Snakes to him. Every time he chose to save someone, another person would have to die in their place. Following that path, he would forever be branded a hypocrite. But so what? Nam Gung needed power, even if it meant facing the destiny of a hypocrite. He focused his mind. He focused his breath into the executioner's blade, praying for the gods to aid him one more time. Then he summoned the national guardian spirits. The moment he opened his eyes, his soul detection skill activated. Countless souls from nearby graves flowed into his blade, resonating with its power. Once the process was complete, Nam Gung could summon 3 national guardian spirits. Upon being summoned, they knelt before him, awaiting his command. Meanwhile, Myung-hun was carrying Shin on his back, fighting off the goblins hand to hand, one after another. He wondered if his boss was doing okay. Looking at Shin sleeping so soundly, Myung-hun couldn't believe his eyes. Did he hit his head or something to be passed out like this? Seeing the waterfall of goblins pouring down, he couldn't help but curse. These bastards are more numerous than bacteria. Just then, a goblin leaped out from his left side, catching Myung-hun off guard. He couldn't react in time, but just as it raised its club to strike, its head was sliced clean in two. Overjoyed, Myung-hun turned around and called out Nam Gung's name. Seeing that his boss had acquired some new followers, he grew curious, but Nam Gung had no time to explain the ghost story. He simply handed him the executioner's blade. Myung-hun had been a promising kendo practitioner, which was why Nam Gung entrusted the sword to him. His own arm was getting tired from all the slashing. Myung-hun didn't hesitate for a second and took the greatsword from him. He once promised his master he would never touch a sword again, but his master probably never foresaw a day when humanity would face annihilation. Weep now, O Punisher of Hell. Myung-hun holds the sword, striking a cool pose. When he suddenly realizes he doesn't even know the sword's name, a true class clown can find a way to be funny anywhere. Over here, the goblins are still on a rampage. A child left under a bridge is crying for their mother. The mother above wants to rush down to her child, but is held back. At that moment, a goblin appears behind the child, ready to strike, but before it can even say hello, its head is sent flying from its body. Myung-hun tells the child to run to their mother while he faces off against the goblin horde. Nam Gung watches his junior eagerly doing his work for him. He can't reveal his own overpowered abilities in broad daylight. He has to hide his trump card until the final moment. The reason he trusts and sought out Myung-hun is because in a past life the man was the leader of the martial tribe, known as the Guardians. He was the one who fought in the light while Nam Gung commanded from the shadows with his army of souls. The 4 of them take turns slicing through goblins as if playing Fruit Ninja, and after a few hours, they've cleared out all the goblin minions. Myung-hun, his limbs aching with fatigue, collapses to rest, but before he can even catch his breath, the ground begins to shake again, making him jump up in alarm. Nam Gung's face grows tense. Finally, the goblin's boss monster has appeared. The Goblin Warrior. The Goblin Warrior makes a beeline for Myung-hun, swinging a crude blade as large as the man himself in a single cleave. Myung-hun has to clench every muscle in his core, but he's still sent flying 8 meters. After clearing that obstacle, the warrior continues on its straight path. Nam Gung approaches to assess the situation and sees that Myung-hun took a light hit, so he probably doesn't have any broken bones and is still good to go. Myung-hun is speechless at his friend's nonchalance as his attention shifts back to the warrior. Nam Gung figures it's heading toward the shrine which was originally built for humans to offer harvest to the Goblin Lord. Now that place is a memorial, and the goblins will use it as a den to breed at an alarming rate. If they touch that memorial, Myung-hun's blood boils. How could a sacred place become a nest for those filthy creatures? It's at this moment that he stops and wonders how Nam Gung could possibly know all this information. Nam Gung calmly states that this is his second life. After hearing this, Myung-hun is stunned for a few seconds. He doesn't know what to say, other than to offer some dazed praise. As expected of you. He adds that this second playthrough must be boring for him, so they should just end this quickly. Nam Gung calms down his overzealous hype man Myung-hun. You're still a novice kid. To wipe out this goblin infestation, you have to kill the world boss, the Goblin Lord. The Goblin Lord is even smaller than the minions he was just slaying. It looks as weak as a snail, yet it's the final boss. Nam Gung explains that the Horde follows it because it uses magic. At that moment, Myung-hun looks over at Somin, who is still snoring away on Nam Gung's back. He says he's put the girl to sleep, so there's no need to worry. Nam Gung then summons his soul soldiers to fight the warriors, not forgetting to remind his junior to get used to this new reality, which is basically a survival game. The Goblin Warrior is standing guard when its head suddenly twists 180 degrees toward the commotion. A dagger thrown by Nam Gung flies straight into its eye, causing it to let out a pained shriek. Nam Gung grits his teeth and charges forward. The warrior shakes off the pain, pulls out its massive crude blade, and starts slashing wildly but naturally. Missing every shot, Nam Gung pulled 2 M-grade poison darts from his pouch and jammed them into its neck, causing its entire body to go numb. He then turned and shouted a signal to Myung-hun, who leaped up from behind, gritted his teeth, and slashed straight at the warrior's neck. The two of them coordinated with textbook precision, but it was a shame Myung-hun seemed to have skipped a meal. The slash was too shallow. Just then, the poison wore off and the warrior regained its senses, roaring again. "You worthless!" Myung-hun jumped back to the ground, insisting the warrior must have known how to flex its muscles to mitigate the damage. He wondered where Nam Gung even found such potent poison needles. Nam Gung replied flatly, "Anj Street, the underground plaza." Myung-hun was amazed. He wanted to stop by to buy an automatic nose-hair trimmer and a ton of other things, rattling them off at lightning speed. Nam Gung had to pull him back to reality. In front of them, the warrior was going into a frenzy, wielding its dull blade. It swung the dull blade in a wide arc. Nam Gung leaped back, and this time he used a full 3 poison needles, throwing them straight and deep into its left chest. After being hit by the needles, the warrior felt a strange high as its body went numb, and it collapsed to the floor without any strength to resist. Myung-hun seized the opportunity and charged in. This time, he would use 200% of his power to avoid the previous embarrassment. And with that, the warrior's head was lopped clean off before the creature could even fully enjoy its drug-induced high. Myung-hun rolled his shoulder. That goblin's hide was so tough it made his entire bicep ache. Nam Gung once again reminded him not to let his guard down. The two of them still had the final boss to deal with, but when they looked up to find it, the Goblin Lord had vanished. As if sensing something, Nam Gung instantly whipped his head around and frantically called out Myung-hun's name. The Goblin Lord had silently appeared right beside him. It had appeared out of nowhere and was preparing to unleash a devastating skill. Hearing Nam Gung call his name, Myung-hun just smiled obliviously and answered, "Yeah. Now I understand why he died in the previous timeline." Swoosh. One of my summons immediately jumped in front of Myung-hun, taking the blow for him. The power was so overwhelming the summoned soldier was instantly destroyed for a second time. Nam Gung's brow furrowed in annoyance. Seeing it get one-shotted made it difficult to form a new strategy. Myung-hun, enraged by the cheap shot, grabbed his sword and charged forward. Aiming for the Goblin Lord, it immediately used magic to conjure a barrier blocking his slash. Not only that, the shield also reflected the force, throwing Myung-hun back several feet. He lay sprawled on the ground, completely dazed. Nam Gung quickly explained that dealing with the shield wasn't that hard. You just have to keep smashing it with brute force until it breaks. Myung-hun was bewildered. He had just been sent flying, so how could he possibly shatter that shield? Nam Gung picked up the Executioner's blade. As long as the main character's aura is present, nothing is impossible. He then handed the blade to Myung-hun. Seeing his confused expression, Nam Gung explained, "This sword is cursed by the soul trapped within it." He placed a hand on Myung-hun's shoulder, instructing, "No matter what happens, do not let go of this sword." Then he activated Mind's Eye. A surge of crimson energy enveloped Myung-hun. The Goblin Lord seemed to sense the danger and immediately shrieked, calling for its children. The entire horde of goblins charged madly towards the two of them. Nam Gung continued to channel Mind's Eye while his other hand pulled out a silver dagger and hurled it straight at them. When the silver dagger shattered, it created a massive explosion, incinerating all the goblins in its radius. But this was just a skill to buy time for him to buff Myung-hun's power. At that moment, Myung-hun was absorbing the soul. The Executioner, within the sword, a pitch-black essence began to spread throughout his body. The moment he became one with the Executioner, his two eyes glowed crimson red. At this moment, he had only one single target, the one who had ambushed him. Myung-hun roared and then shot like a bullet towards the Goblin Lord. His face couldn't hide his sheer excitement. The Goblin Lord broke out in a nervous sweat never before. Had it been pursued so intensely, so it was a bit bewildered Myung-hun as the Executioner pierced straight through the protective shield of the creature, the Goblin. War screamed as if it had seen a ghost. A mix of its native tongue and a foreign language jumbled into one. Myung-hun was still frantically thrusting with all his might, aiming straight for the center of the Goblin Lord's body and piercing through, sending it to the afterlife. Myung-hun gradually returned to his human form, looking cooler than ever. If you hadn't been watching from the start, you'd probably think he was the main character. After the storm comes, the calm Nam Gung stood watching the blue eye in the sky slowly close while his subordinates were dealing with the remaining stragglers. After the last goblin was annihilated, the sky was clear of any dark clouds, but what was more important was the pile of rewards that dropped after the Goblin Lord was defeated. Myung-hun, now awake, was stunned, shocked, and utterly flabbergasted to see a pile of treasure chests suddenly fall from the sky. Nam Gung opened the chests, revealing a series of equipment provided for them. Myung-hun picked up the Goblin Lord's bracelet and asked Nam Gung, "Do I need to give this to you?" Nam Gung refused, saying he didn't need it. Besides, he had already put it on his wrist, so why was he even asking? A certain chest emitted a brilliant aura that caught Nam Gung's attention. Inside was the heart of the Goblin Lord, a rare grade item. Myung-hun didn't know the specifics, but one look told him it was top-tier loot. However, for Nam Gung, this item was useless because he didn't use magic. Myung-hun was the same. He planned to sell it to someone else for an exorbitant price when another hell gate opened. But when Nam Gung tried to store it in his inventory, it was rejected. It prompted him to check the recommended target for this system. Nam Gung had never noticed this feature in his past life. Even so, he wondered who here could possibly use magic. As soon as he checked the target designated by the Goblin Lord's heart, a stream of energy shot out from it. Nam Gung followed its trajectory with his eyes. The next second, his eyes widened in astonishment. The recommended target was none other than Suin, his daughter, who possessed legendary-grade magic potential. His daughter's innate talent amazed Nam Gung, but because he had lost her in his past life, from the very beginning, he had never discovered it. But Suin's talent was something he had never encountered before, even in his previous life. She had the potential to develop to the absolute peak. Although this sounded incredibly fortunate, he didn't want his daughter's hands to be stained with blood. Myung-hun, seeing him lost in thought, suggested that he could choose not to awaken the magic talent of Somin. Even if this world turned into a living hell, the children should still be allowed to live a happy life. At that moment, as Omen gradually woke up after a sleep of only a few hours, Seeing Mi-eung-hun standing before her looking like he just rolled through the mud, the little girl was surprised. Mi-eung-hun cheerfully spoke to Shin, asking if she wanted to play the airplane game with him like they used to anymore, but Somin was no longer the Somin of the past. She said those games were only for 3-year-old kids. The curious little girl scanned the scene before her, which left her in complete shock. The bodies of humans and goblins were indistinguishable. Somin fell silent, then reproached Nam Gung for not keeping his promise. The two of them had said they would get through this together, yet he had lulled her. Let the child sleep until the banquet was over before waking her. Nam Gung could only apologize. He didn't want his little girl to witness the bloody slaughter. A trembling boy approached, pulling on her sleeve while crying and begging for help, then pointed toward his mother lying on the ground. She was under a goblin's blade. The boy sobbed in agony, and Somin understood exactly how excruciating the pain of losing a mother was. She hugged the boy tightly. Mi-eung-hun noticed that Somin showed no fear at the devastating scene. On the contrary, she displayed a mature composure. He thought the girl was brave like Nam Gung, but Nam Gung said she was more like her mother. He was just a weakling who only knew how to lock Somin within walls because of his own fear. However, Mi-eung-hun knew any father would do the same. Who would want to throw their own daughter into a sea of monsters? After all, Somin turned and told Nam Gung to take the boy with them. But he disagreed. Compared to joining their party to hunt monsters, the boy would be safer in a designated shelter. Suddenly, Somin's attitude hardened. She didn't want the little boy to be left alone to experience the same terrifying feeling she had. The feeling of having no one by your side, especially when your mother goes to heaven. Hearing those words from his daughter made Nam Gung freeze in his tracks. He realized how indifferent he had been to his own daughter back then. "See, what did I tell you?" Du's taunting voice echoed from a spatial gate. He mocked him as a necromancer who dared to walk among the living. As he spoke, he grinned from ear to ear, a smile that made everyone want to punch him a few times. Nam Gung was annoyed, especially having his powers exposed in front of others, most of all his daughter. Du immediately changed the subject. Congratulations on slaying the Goblin Lord before their spawning plan could be deployed. But for him, this whole situation was heading in the wrong direction. Nam Gung was confused. Hadn't Do said that the more actively he operated, the better it was for him? Du confirmed it. But he also hated the simple-minded higher-ups above him. Those high rankers were against Nam Gung using his soul soldiers. Not before the festival begins. Hearing this, Nam Gung was also furious with the gods' demands. Du explained it was because everything would become unbalanced. He knew Nam Gung controlled the guardian spirits of the nation and wielded the power of ancient gods and heroes. Annoyed that his trump card was revealed, he warned Du to stop gossiping like a marketplace hag and get to the point. The shorty mushroom was here today to make a deal with him. A life for a life. Since you've absorbed a few souls, you need to pay the price. Initially, the exchange could be made with money, but the treacherous Do claimed they were both at fault, so it had to end with a life. Then he pointed to the kid standing next to Somin, implying the boy was the life that needed to be exchanged. Nam Gung never expected that fiend Do to play this dirty. Or was he just testing his loyalty? "What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" Somin shouted angrily, and she rushed forward to land a punch right on Du's face. In all his years of existence, he had never been so humiliated. Du immediately used a skill to blast Somin away. She slammed hard into a wall and coughed up blood in agony. Mess with anyone else but touching his daughter was unforgivable. Nam Gung immediately charged forward, but his fate was the same as Somin's. Mi-eung-hun, looking badass with his executioner's blade, also lunged forward, but his outcome was even more pathetic. All three were restrained by Du, who laughed gleefully, taunting Nam Gung. "Gung, I may like you, but if your daughter crosses the line, she needs to be taught a lesson, don't you think?" Nam Gung struggled against the serpent-like restraints, but it was futile. Do demanded he choose one life among the three of them, or all three would perish. "Damn it, you fing bastard!" Nam Gung screamed furiously in helplessness as the Elf Lord's heart fell from his pocket. Instantly it shot towards Somin. This spectacle made Joe laugh with glee, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Nam Gung gritted his teeth. It turned out that Bastard had recognized Somin's gift from the very beginning, truly a venomous snake. He closed his eyes helplessly. "I'm sorry, Sua. I wanted to let our little girl live a normal life, but Somin didn't blame Nam Gung. The little girl looked at him affectionately. "There's no way you made the wrong choice, Dad. I believe in you." The soul of Sua appeared clearly, and awakened the magical power within Somin. Her magical attribute began to transform, and upon completion, one of Somin's eyes turned red, the sign of a psychic power awakening. This transformation astonished Nam Gung. To think that all this time in his own home, such terrifying potential had been hidden. Somin, now awakened, wanted to test her new skill. She angrily launched an attack at the treacherous Joe. Facing Somin's attack, Joe gave a confident smile, then lightly flicked his finger. In the blink of an eye, he dispelled Somin's magic. However, he was thrilled that the little girl had used myth-grade magic on her very first attempt. Now his attention was completely on Somin. Joe recalled his snakes, while Somin glared at him warningly. "Don't move." Despite her threat, a second later she collapsed to the ground from exhaustion. Joe moved closer to observe. Psychic powers already consume a lot of mana, and since this was Somin's first time using them, her collapse was to be expected. He then helped stabilize the mana inside her body. Seeing Joe touch his daughter, Nam Gung struggled to his feet and roared, "Don't you dare touch my daughter! I don't care if you're the Supreme Being, or whatever the hell else, I'll kill you. I'm merely helping the child," Joe replied with a treacherous smile to his outburst. Under his touch, Somin's breathing steadied and she drifted off to sleep. Joe reminded Nam Gung that the Constellations were also interested in Somin, which is why they overlooked this incident. This meant he would have to protect the girl from monsters and other constellations. He said this while wearing an incredibly punchable face. Nam Gung was irritated by his nonchalant attitude. He was supposed to be his supreme being, but was he just going to stand by and do nothing, Thud? Joe then tossed him an item. It was originally a gift the constellations planned to grant him, but he had snatched it first. Joe acted all high and mighty as if he'd done some great deed. Before leaving, he didn't forget to taunt him. "I wish you a long life so you can continue to bring me victories." In the car, Somin woke up in a state of utter confusion. Myung-hun quickly explained that she had passed out from mana overload. As for the crying baby, Hosung Nam Gung had already taken him to the Daejeon rescue station. Somin, in a huff, grabbed Nam Gung's hair and demanded answers. He seemed used to his daughter yanking on his hair every day. At the Daejeon rescue station was Jin Soo-hee from the Internal Affairs Corps, making it the safest place in all of Korea. Somin retorted, "If Daejeon is the safest place, then why are we driving somewhere else?" "Seoul," Nam Gung answered. "According to my memories, this is where the next Hellgate is going to open. If they want to stop an even greater disaster, they have to conquer that dungeon and claim its reward. This survival game, this perilous quest made Myung-hun break out in a cold sweat while Somin was rendered completely speechless. Myung-hun curiously asked Nam Gung if he was currently an apostle for the Church of God or something to have such extensive connections. Nam Gung confirmed it. Myung-hun then wondered if you're an apostle, do you have to do any of the fighting? He simply stated that their one and only goal was to become the absolute strongest they could be. If not, it was only a matter of time before they'd be killed. On the road to Seoul, the sky was as dark as the day he lost her. All train services had been shut down. With the highway destroyed, a frantic Myung-hun was driving. He suggested they take the national road to be safe. Suddenly, his eyes flew open in shock as a goblin appeared out of nowhere and slammed into their car's windshield. The car swerved for a few seconds. Nam Gung stepped out looking grimly at the creature. Did he really have to deal with this green-skinned mob again? As he was thinking, an arrow whizzed past his face and struck the goblin behind him, killing it instantly. In front of him stood a young man with glasses holding a bow, the archer responsible for the impressive shot. He stammered an apology to Nam Gung. He explained that a goblin was about to ambush him from behind, which is why he fired. Nam Gung, in contrast, was even calmer than the archer. He told the young man to lower his weapon so they could talk. After exchanging information, Nam Gung learned that this guy had cleared out the goblins. Myung-hun also got out of the car praising the four-eyed guy for managing to exclusively target the goblins' weak spots in the middle of the night. Nam Gung racked his brain trying to recall his memories. An archer this skilled, there was no way. He hadn't heard of him in his past life. He immediately asked for the man's name. He introduced himself as John Gong. in a name that was both strange and familiar. Myung-hun curiously asked why the young man was on the road this late at night, especially since a lockdown order was in effect. John Gong-in explained he was trying to get to Seoul to visit his father in the hospital but couldn't get in contact. Nam Gung now understood why he'd never met him in his previous life. If John Gong-in hadn't run into him here today, he would have definitely kicked the bucket somewhere on this very road. He told Gong-in to take his beat-up bicycle and just go home, but John Gong-in pleaded with them to let him tag along. He even offered an item as a reward. The moment he heard about payment, Nam Gung started to reconsider. John Gong-in then took out a stone. It was a deep purple stone. He admitted he didn't know what it was, only that it dropped after he killed a monster. As Myung-hun took the stone to examine it, he sarcastically asked if they were collecting pretty rocks now. Just as he was about to toss it, Nam Gung quickly stopped him. A stone that dropped from a monster. This caught Nam Gung's attention. Staring at the familiar shape and color, his eyes widened in shock. This item wasn't supposed to appear this early. On the way to Seoul, Nam Gung repeatedly asked John Gong-in if he was sure it dropped from a goblin. He held the stone, examining it. This was a rune stone, specifically an agility rune. To analyze it properly, you had to understand the fundamentals. Since the festival began, humanity had gained two types of power. One was an innate ability like so, the other came from stats. These rune stones, which increased a person's stats, were a unique item capable of doing just that. Because of this, rune stones were the #1 best-selling item on the system. However, they rarely dropped from monsters. But it wasn't entirely impossible. Suddenly, something clicked for Nam Gung. He asked John Gong-in where he learned archery. It turned out John Gong-in's father, former national archery champion, had taught him. Right now, his father was paralyzed and bedridden from an injury. The combination of national athlete and the surname John rang a bell for Myung-hun. There was only one person who fit that description, John Tae-ho. Just as Nam Gung suspected in his previous life, that man was a rune master. He possessed an extremely rare innate talent, but it was never passed on, probably because his son died in the early stages of the apocalypse. Many international guilds had tried to recruit him, but John Tae-ho had been in a coma for 7 years due to his injury, while everyone was desperately trying to get him to teach them. Saint Aya, one of the 8 virtuous stars, spent a fortune to buy a divine elixir to boost his power, even though it was called a saint, but she secretly committed evil deeds to solidify her position. One of which was to eliminate John Tae-ho because he refused her invitation to join her guild. And just like that, a genius of humanity was taken out. But this time, he was here. With his return, everything would be different. Myung-hun asked Nam Gung if they should head straight to the hospital, but he decided to go to one place, first causing John Gong-in and So-min to protest. "Didn't you promise to let me see my father? What if something happens if we are late?" Nam Gung calmly explained. Right now, due to the Goblin blockade, various forces and even the military have surrounded key locations in South Korea, especially medical facilities. So the hospital is safer than wandering on the streets like they are. It's best to go where they need to go. John? Gong-in found this hard to understand. Nam Gung said he would awaken John Tae-ho with an elixir. However, it's 1,000 to buy it. Myung-hun, who had already cleared a dungeon, had a rough idea of the situation. This time they were heading to another dungeon and would farm it to make money. So-min also encouraged John Gong-in, saying his father was on his 2nd run, so he already knew the whole script. Just tag along, and the money would roll in. John Gong-in looked at them judgmentally. Who knew he'd gotten into a car with a bunch of delusional psychos? And even if they got the money, where could they possibly buy an elixir? Yo, see, Nam Gung concluded with a single sentence. Just then, a golden pillar of light shot down from the sky, creating an explosion on the highway. The sudden light show left everyone in the car stunned, but Nam Gung just gave a mysterious smirk, right on time, as he was in the mood for some shopping. A foot stomped down on a wrecked car. Ghoul had returned to the stage looking like a total menace, an appearance that made everyone break into a cold sweat. He stood atop the pile of cars and arrogantly declared, "From now on, the constellations will grant you all a chance to awaken." The moment he finished his grand performance was met with chaos as people on the street started to flee in all directions, wanting nothing to do with him. The feeling of being ignored enraged Ghoul. He used Yaksha's roar to blast a path before him. The intense heat left a long scorch mark on the road. Ghoul wiped his mouth after the blast. The old saying goes when someone speaks, others should listen. Yet you all are squawking like a broken market. He continued to relay the message. The details will be automatically transmitted into the minds of all humans, so there's no customer support hotline. But he's the flashy type, so he came here to make the announcement beep beep. A piercing car horn cut Ghoul off, infuriating him. "Which one of you little punks laid on the horn, huh?" Me, Nam Gung, opened the car door and stepped out. "If you've got the guts, come down here and let's go one-on-one." Seeing his face, which was 70% terrifying and 30% also terrifying Ghoul, immediately lost his nerve. Myung-hoon guessed Ghoul was the Yaksha he'd mentioned. He judged him to be far stronger than those goblins. "How dare you compare me to those mere goblins, you insolent human!" Ghoul leaped down and stepped toward them. Then he placed his hand on Nam Gung's shoulder and whispered, "Big bro, Nam Gung, how did you know I would be here? A lot of people are watching, so could you?" "Please let me save a little face." Nam Gung didn't hesitate for a second. "Ghoul, cough up all your items." "Wait, no, open your inventory." Ghoul stammered, but the two of them hadn't even formed a contract yet, and Nam Gung was already making such demands. "This is too much." Nam Gung shot him a side-eye, telling him to hurry up and give him the elixir. Ghoul started sweating. This client is broke and has a rotten personality. He doesn't even have 400,000 to his name, and he's demanding an elixir. "Looks like those scars of yours have healed up nicely." "Huh?" Ghoul unconsciously clutched the arm where he'd been stabbed before, but he still couldn't break the rules. Besides, the festival has already started. Over on the side, Jun Gongin was curious about what Nam Gung was planning. What's up with Gizu looking so Myung-hoon had no idea what someone living a second life would even do. That's right. Jun Gongin completely rejected the term second life. The appearance of monsters was easier to believe than that. A moment later, the two of them finished their conversation. Gizu bowed respectfully to Nam Gung. Nam Gung returned with his lute in hand, while Gizu continued his intimidating act lecturing the people on the street. Jeon Gong-in was in deep shock after receiving the information from Gizu. He did that as soon as the ceremony was announced, Nam Gung explained while looking at the goofy Yaksha, acting all high and mighty over there. It was then that Jeon Gong-in realized he was about to join this group of psychos. Someone is living a second life. Myung-hoon didn't know what to do with Nam Gung's vehicle. Nam Gung told him to just ride it. He was astonished imagining himself driving the vehicle to clear dungeons without even having to move his legs or arms. But Nam Gung's plan shattered his fantasy. Myung-hoon was assigned to go to Sinchon and wait for them. He was confused. Even kids like Soman were allowed to fight, so why was a grown man like him being put on the bench? Nam Gung explained that a bigger battle called the Void Time would take place in Sinchon. At the gate of that dungeon, a number of mutated monsters would appear. Even if they cleared the dungeon and closed the gate early, a wave of monsters would still pour out from inside. That's when the Void Time happens. Myung-hoon was stunned, thinking how frustrating this system was. Even if they managed to close the gate early, the civilian population would still suffer casualties. That was why Nam Gung was sending Myung-hoon ahead to intercept the Void Time and protect everyone. This noble mission got Myung-hoon all fired up. "You can count on me. You really are on another level." Nam Gung was already used to this. He was calculating in his head that perhaps in this timeline, things would be different because of his regression. But this was also a huge business opportunity for them to earn capital, buy better gear and elixirs, and surpass Master John Tae-ho. Nam Gung put on his jacket and left, taking the two kids Soman and Jeon Gong-in with him. They planned to meet Myung-hoon in Sinchon. Inside the dungeon, Jeon Gong-in was calmly shooting arrows into one monster after another while on the other side. Somin was bombarding them with her psychic powers. He admired her talent. It turned out the magic from the cartoons he watched as a kid was real. As Somin cleared away the monster corpses, she sighed. That Nam Gung hadn't told her to bring any mana potions to her. This dungeon crawl felt just like a live-action version of the games she watched on TikTok. Jeon Gong-in was surprised by Somin's casual attitude, especially since she was even younger than him. Somin explained that Gen Z kids aren't scared of zombies anymore because they've already played tons of VR games. Somin had even live-streamed herself playing them a few times. Jeon Gong-in was the opposite. He wasn't good at gaming and preferred to read books, which is why he was so nearsighted. Someone confidently declared she was a gifted gamer. If she was number 2, then only Faker could be number 1. Nam Gung reminded his daughter not to get cocky, or she might pass out in the middle of a fight again like last time. He was secretly scouting the zombies around the next corner. He then signaled for Jeon Gong-in to move up and launch a ranged attack. Jeon's skill was absolutely top-tier, earning praise from Nam Gung. He wondered if the boy intended to become an archer like his father, but Jeon Gong-in had only gotten good at archery after the goblins appeared. He found it was easier to shoot those monsters than hitting a stationary target. In Nam Gung's thoughts, Jeon Gong-in had awakened a sharpshooting skill. He originally thought this talent. His ability was thanks to a runestone, just like Jeon's. Jeon Gong-in felt something changing inside him, but he couldn't describe it. He said he would tell him one day when he understood it better. Suddenly, Somin pointed excitedly. The little girl had spotted a reward chest behind the horde of zombies. Immediately, the zombies on both sides of the path were incinerated by Somin's psychic power. Clear the way. Big Sis is getting her reward. Somin, stop right there. Nam Gung frantically tried to stop his daughter, but because of the magical explosion, Somin couldn't hear him. She just charged straight toward the chest. Nam Gung was frantic because, according to his memories, that chest was a trap. With no other choice, Nam Gung immediately asked Jeon Gong-in to shoot at that chest before Somin could touch it. Just as Somin was eagerly about to open the treasure chest, Jeon Gong-in's arrow arrived. A massive explosion erupted instantly, causing Nam Gung to cry out Somin's name in fear. As the thick smoke and dust cleared, there was Somin with her hair all poofed up like a middle-aged lady's perm. Nam Gung breathed a sigh of relief that his daughter was safe. He then explained this was a dungeon trap. Thanks to Jeon Gong-in, Somin wasn't instantly killed when opening that chest. Instantly killed Jeon, Gong-in muttered. Then his jaw dropped. This is crazy. He should have said that from the very beginning. Somin looked dejected. I thought I'd cleared the final gate, but it was just a trap. But inside the trap, there was a reward. A golden key dropped out after the explosion. This was the key to the boss room. The 3 of them stood still before the towering door. Behind this door was the Ghoul King. This title made the 2 kids swallow nervously. More details will be revealed in the next chapter. Returning to Myung-hoon, the one sent to stop the void time. He was currently having a headache because the road was jammed, worse than rush hour traffic in LA. Since this was Nam Gung's car, he couldn't just abandon it and walk. Suddenly, the National Emergency Intelligence Management Center issued an evacuation notice. People from up ahead suddenly started running back, making Myung-hoon wonder what was happening. He poked his head out of the dilapidated car window held together with duct tape. In the sky, a massive black hole loomed, signaling the arrival of the void time. Back to our trio of troublemakers, Nam Gung assessed the situation inside. There was the Ghoul King, along with 4 elite zombies protecting it. Elite-grade zombies, just from the name you could tell they were tougher than the regular ones. But Jeon Gong-in was confident he could take them down with the power of friendship. As Nam Gung said, not a chance. The Ghoul King would resurrect them one by one each time they were defeated. In other words, they had to eliminate all 4 elite zombies at the same time. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to touch a single hair on the Ghoul King. Somin suddenly remembered that Nam Gung had bought some random stuff from that Yaksha Gizu. Now was the time to use it right. Nam Gung had bought a knight's pendant of Raon. This item would help them slow down the zombies' regeneration process, but stopping all 4 at once would be difficult. Indeed, but he was the main character, and he had a plan. Meanwhile, in Seochogu, the first line of defense had fallen, and the second line was on its last legs. A commander was urgently requesting air support after all civilians had been evacuated from the summon point. He feared that goblins from all over the country were flocking here. If they didn't act now, everything would spiral out of control. The damage would be immeasurable, but the person on the other end of the line seemed unwilling to send reinforcements. No matter what they did, the media would just blame the military for all this damage anyway. He was furious. Angrily, he threw the phone away. In the end, his superiors only wanted to sacrifice them to save their own rotten pride, just as the situation became extremely tense. A soldier reported a civilian driving towards their position. The captain ordered the soldier to quickly turn that civilian away. But when he turned around, the soldier was stunned, unable to believe the sight before him. A beat-up jalopy was brazenly plowing through the horde of goblins on the road. Seeing the driver gritting his teeth with all his might, the soldier could only come to one conclusion: I think he's a complete madman. Inside the Ghoul King's chamber, along with 4 elite zombies, Nam Gung was summoning his guardian spirits for the fight. Somin used her psychic skill to tear off the arms of one of the zombies. But its arms immediately regenerated, and it threw a punch at Jeongong-in. He jumped back in shock, but even so, Jeongong-in remained calm, drawing his bow to take aim. He felt a pang of regret for not going to the hospital with his father in the first place. The arrow of resentment from Jeongong-in shredded one side of its face. Simultaneously, 2 spirit soldiers rushed in to finish off the zombie, making it collapse. It was then hit by Nam Gung's holy light, which prevented its wounds from regenerating. After a fierce struggle, they had finally defeated one. Nam Gung signaled to his 2 party members to take care of the remaining 3. The plan proceeded smoothly. The Ghoul King remained seated observing the fight even as 2 of its consorts were on the brink of death. Suddenly, it raised its hand and began to mutter an incantation. Jeongong-in heard it but couldn't understand the words. But suddenly Somin stammered, "A resurrection spell." Nam Gung was quite surprised that Somin could understand the monster's speech. Could it be an influence from her mother Sua? If Sua's spirit had interfered during her awakening process, it would explain why Somin possessed a rare non-elemental magic skill. But he had never seen a case like this before, not even in his previous life. Nam Gung told Somin to keep listening and figure out what the Ghoul King was chanting. In the meantime, the elite zombies began to regenerate and re-engage Nam Gung. This raid was becoming harder and harder to finish. Just with a single pendant, everything felt like an endless loop. But he hoped this new strategy could finally end the cycle, even if it was just a spur-of-the-moment idea. "Somin, hit this pendant with your magic," Nam Gung yelled, holding up the artifact. He hoped this method could amplify Somin's mana and destroy all 4 zombies simultaneously. A zombie raised its fist to smash down on Nam Gung. He quickly dodged to keep the pendant from being shattered. He was now alone, surrounded by a circle of 3 colossal elite zombies. Somin panicked to the point of tears. She couldn't hit the tiny pendant while Nam Gung was constantly leaping to evade their attacks. Jeongong-in suddenly aimed with incredible coolness. His arrow pierced through the zombies, buying precious time for Nam Gung. He shouted, "Now," but at that very moment, a zombie's fist shattered the pendant in Nam Gung's hand. It fell to the ground in pieces. Nam Gung's other spirit soldiers were also crushed within their massive hands. The Ghoul King clutched its stomach, letting out a cackling laugh. To the boss monster, their little show was just a farce. Somin was terrified, thinking everything was over. "No," Nam Gung's voice echoed. In his hand, the 2 sharp fragments of the pendant cut into his flesh until it bled. But he just smirked slyly. "This is just the beginning." The 3 zombies lunged at Nam Gung all at once. He gripped the sharp fragments in his hand, wielding them like daggers, and hurled them at the zombie horde. Nam Gung grabbed one of the zombies by the head and yelled, "Right now." Somin just waiting for that cue, Somin unleashed her mana. The broken pieces of the pendant had amplified her magical power. The strike sent 3 zombies flying back forcefully. The Ghoul King stopped laughing. It still had 1 more zombie, and that zombie charged. Out from Nam Gung's left, but its head was immediately severed by the Guardian Spirit's sword, taking care of all 4 of them. With its zombies annihilated, the Ghoul King flew into a rage, but a second later a sword pierced straight through its head. The spirit pinned the Ghoul King underfoot, but suddenly its skeletal chest began to stir from beneath the bones. Something shot out from it, impaling Nam Gung and causing him immense pain. Meanwhile, at Sinchon, the team captain recognized the madman in the vehicle to be Mi-eung-hun and approached him, unable to hide his curiosity about finding him here. Mi-eung-hun greeted Ho-jun with a cool smirk, saying, "I am the hero who appears whenever the world is in need." Mi-eung-hun then stepped out of the car, mentioning that they would reunite with Nam Gung sooner or later. Hearing this, Ho-jun was surprised yet again. But Mi-eung-hun didn't. Elaborate. Right now, they needed to hold their current position. Ho-jun understood, but he didn't have any usable weapons left to offer Mi-eung-hun. Everything had been used up. That's not necessary. I brought something way better, he said. Mi-ung-hun drew the executioner's blade he had rented from Nam Gung Hojun was shocked to see a sword summoned. From thin air, even more surprising was that Mi-ung-hun was using that sword to fight against the bulletproof goblins. Mi-ung-hun explained that the thought of the yaksha and the gate was already in Hojun's mind. Guns were no longer the real weapons. The real weapon was the one in his hand. Saying this, Mi-ung-hun gave a goblin core to Hojun, trusting that he would be the one to use this weapon. To its fullest potential, he didn't forget to tell Hojun to treat it like his fiancée because he had spent his entire share of the reward to purchase it. Upon hearing this on the verge of death, Hojun found a new glimmer of hope. He dropped his gun and fought side by side with Mi-ung-hun. Meanwhile, Sumin's calls echoed through the Ghoul King's chamber as she witnessed Nam Gung get severely injured. Suddenly, Jeongongen stopped, Sumin coolly adjusting his glasses and saying, "I think I can resolve this on my own." Jeongongen's eyes gleamed as he mentioned the words weak point. The Ghoul King had finished dealing with the guardian spirit, but an arrow suddenly flew from behind and pierced its chest, causing it to cry out. Nam Gung was surprised that Jeongongen was the one who shot it. He never would have guessed that the Ghoul King's weak point was its chest and not its head. Jeongongen coldly signaled for Sumin to use a spell to immobilize it. His protagonist-like demeanor felt strange to Sumin, but she had to focus on the task before her. While Sumin was restraining it, Jeongongen shot an arrow straight through the shoulder of the Ghoul King. This move made Nam Gung suspicious. The kid's skills weren't trash, so why was he aiming for the shoulder instead of the head? But Jeongongen had already calculated everything. He reminded Sumin to avoid attacking its head, and Sumin continued to cast her spell, but this time her magic was deflected by the Ghoul King. It then leaped up and lunged toward Sumin in an instant. In that very moment, another of Jeongongen's arrows flew out, piercing its left chest and sending the Ghoul King tumbling to the ground. Its body disintegrated as if it never existed. Nam Gung approached. Jeongongen had finished it off with just 3 ordinary arrows without even using much magic. This really made Nam Gung question what happened. Jeongongen just scratched his head and explained that he saw its body glowing in certain places. If you keep hitting those glowing spots, its body will drop runes just like this. This isn't a random glow, and it's not a 100% chance that it will glow. He calls this a fissure. If the fissure glows, then it's 100% certain. He was only able to confirm this now to tell Nam Gung. Nam Gung listened and roughly understood. Killing the Ghoul King without needing the necklace must mean that besides the dropped runestone, there had to be something more. Are the creatures that drop glowing runestones random? If not, then he could become a runestone collector by combining his magic skills and knowledge. Together with Jihan, he could increase his power almost infinitely. Somin gasped when she saw a glowing chest, but this time the little girl didn't jump the gun. This was a reward. The chest contained many different things. Nam Gung's smile slowly turned inhuman. This time he hit the jackpot. The chest contained the Ghoul King's silver 1,500 pieces and the Ghoul King's gold 15,000 pieces. The rain of money was dazzling. Meanwhile, Jeongongen was holding the gauntlets of the Ghoul King, which increased concentration, much like concentrating on the foul stench of these gloves. Nam Gung explained that concentration wasn't only for attacking. It could be used for item crafting magic and even using spells. The stench would fade over time. Jeongongen put on the gloves while his other hand pinched his nose shut, but he couldn't stand it. A stream of rainbow spewed from Jeongongen's mouth. Nam Gung added a bonus piece of information saying it would take 3 years for that stench to completely disappear, so he should just enjoy it. Now it was time for the main dish, a bunch of the Ghoul King's old keys. These were the keys to open his treasure vault. Each of them could only take 1 key. As for this scroll, when brought into the treasure vault, a dungeon would appear. Nam Gung gave each of them a key. When they went down into the dungeon later, the 3 of them would likely be separated, so he warned them beforehand. Somin was worried about having to choose one of the doors, since once you go through, you can't go back. In his past life, Nam Gung had never experienced this place, so he didn't know the best way. The only thing he knew was that the one who cleared it would obtain the crown of Kundan, an item for a necromancer. Jihon Go-in looked at him with a judgmental stare. In his head, he thought that even though Nam Gung had lived 2 lives, he acted like a newbie to this world. Nam Gung urged them to hurry and get to Myung-hun's location. Since it was the first dungeon, they didn't need to choose so carefully. At that moment, Nam Gung had entered a door. The scene before him made him marvel. An emperor's vault was truly on another level, several times larger than his own shabby warehouse. He strode around. Each door had a name but no other information. In his past life, he had seen the thorn sword of Monu and the dual swords that the Japanese demon hunter Somiya had used, but right now he didn't need them. A door in the far distance caught Nam Gung's attention. Standing before it, he smiled smugly. "This is what I need." The things he had heard were all just rumors, so he never knew how to obtain them, but now he would be the first to get his hands on it. Nam Gung opened the door to the Book of Bolin. Inside was a dark space with the Book of Bolin resting in the very center of the room, an item that would allow the user to exchange items of any grade. The 2 kids were sitting and waiting for Nam Gung outside. He was the last one out and immediately asked about their situation. Somin held up her lute for him to see a bracelet of the lake fairy that slightly increased magic power during sleep. Meanwhile, Jihon Go-in had chosen a badass-looking sword. Nam Gung was quite surprised. He chose a sword over a bow. Turns out the guy picked it just because of its name, but John Gongen doesn't even know how to use it. He just thought it looked cool. That ridiculous reason combined with his foolish expression left Nam Gung utterly speechless, who had mistaken John Gong-in for a serious warrior. Meanwhile, at Sinchon, Hojun and Myung-hun were in a frenzy slaying monsters. It was the first time Hojun had gotten to experience such a satisfying way to blow off steam. But he noticed the goblin horde was endless, and it was just the 2 of them. Myung-hun chuckled. "Tired already? You're not as strong as you used to be, huh?" Hojun just laughed. He was about to show Myung-hun something that would wipe that smile right off his face. A massive swarm of goblins surging up from the elevator shaft below. They had already reached their limit. Hojun suggested a retreat, but Myung-hun disagreed, arguing that every monster they could kill now mattered. "We can't let Sinchon fall." A goblin's poisoned dagger came flying straight toward them, and by the time Hojun realized it, it was too late. Myung-hun swiftly leaped forward to take the hit for him and then collapsed. The poison instantly paralyzed Myung-hun's entire body. Hojun insisted on retreating to treat the poison. That idiot. He doesn't even have armor on yet. He jumps in to block an attack for someone who does. It was a hopeless situation. Myung-hun, trembling on the ground, insisted he was fine. If they retreated now, the goblins would pour out all over Seoul. "Keep fighting." Myung-hun tried to grasp Hojun's hand, his face turning deathly pale. Not just as a soldier, but also as Kang Hojun. Myung-hun's words were a wake-up call for Hojun. His hands clenched into tight fists. From that moment, the monster Kang Hojun had awakened. His mind now had a single purpose: to annihilate the goblin horde before him. At that moment, the news was reporting on Sinchon, where another kind of monster was on a rampage. This monster tore through the goblins as if they were paper, and accompanying this monster was a man wielding an enormous sword. People wondered if they were cultists or perhaps saviors of the world. One witness hesitated, saying they looked more like destroyers than saviors, and that monster was none other than Kang Hojun. A pack of goblins was bullying a soldier when the sound of heavy footsteps made them turn around curiously. Kang Hojun stood towering before them like a true monster. The goblin with the flower in its hair panicked as a much larger one stepped forward to face Hojun. It told the flower goblin to get out of there. Myung-hun was shocked to see the goblin warrior, but this one was even bigger than the one from before. He wondered if Hojun could handle it as he glanced at the wrecked vehicle, belonging to Nam Gung, calculating his options. Facing the goblin warrior, Hojun muttered, "That's one big goblin." The warrior swung a massive fist right at him. He blocked the attack with both arms. "Too weak. Let me show you some real power." Hojun then threw a massive punch right into the warrior's gut, making it keel over in pain. It had never encountered a human with this level of power. Kang Hojun has a nickname, the Ogre. He can control his breathing, essentially redirecting the blood flow from his brain and using the resources that nourish the brain to fuel his muscles. He sacrifices some cognitive function to achieve superhuman strength and regenerate his muscle fibers. This is his ogre state. Hojun moved in to deliver the finishing blow to the goblin warrior, the small flower goblin. Mustered all its courage and rushed forward, stabbing him. The warrior cried out, "Lily!" It had already told Lily to run, but Lily uttered 2 words, "My comrade." To her, the warrior was her precious comrade. The goblin warrior was stunned, and then it watched in horror as Lily's body was ripped in half. The only thing left was the blood-stained flower she wore. The goblin warrior let out a roar of pure rage, straight into Hojun's face, sending him flying 8 meters in an instant. The warrior, as if buffed with power, leaped up and stomped on Hojun, causing him to spit blood. In his goblin state, he couldn't maintain it for long as the blood flow to his brain was too low. This state could only last for 5 minutes, but 3 minutes had already passed. A wrecked white car sped forward. Ramming straight into the warrior, pinning it against a wall, Mi-eung-hun staggered out to check on Hojun's condition. Behind the car, an explosion startled him. The warrior emerged majestically. Although its face was filled with rage, its eyes were welling up with tears. This sight made Hojun sit up in disbelief. If the warrior was angry because the flower-adorned one died, it was truly ridiculous. Civilians and soldiers had all died at their hands. So what right did it have to be? Angry, Hojun was the one who should be furious. He rose to his feet in a state of absolute rage. With 7 seconds left, Hojun and the warrior charged forward the ladder with the goal of avenging Lily. While Hojun let out a roar I can't even translate. The two clashed in the final second. The warrior had a hole punched through its stomach, while Hojun collapsed on the street exhausted. The goblins were gradually surrounding them. Mi-eung-hun closed his eyes in satisfaction. They always say heroes die young, and for a side character to have such a heroic sacrifice is quite a story. Suddenly, a blast of cold air blew past, making Mi-eung-hun think he had passed on. But when he looked up, the horde of goblins had been frozen solid. Holding out like that was impressive. Mi-eung-hun, it's been a while, hasn't it? Hojun, leave the rest to me and get some rest. Nam Gung's voice rang out as he made a cool entrance wielding Ji-yeon-gongin's sword. After all, she can only use a bow. The Nam Gung father-daughter duo with their dual-wielding combo had nearly cleared out all the goblins on the street. After fighting the Ghoul King, this mob was just small fry. Mi-eung-hun had a question that everyone was wondering. How did Nam Gung get here without a car? Nam Gung jutted his chin towards the subway station, which should have been swarming with goblins. But Nam Gung nonchalantly replied, "We killed them all." As expected of him, Mi-eung-hun proudly gave him a thumbs up. Ji-yeon-gongin was just waiting to reunite with her father. According to Nam Gung's 1,000 heads, but they were far from having enough. At this rate, they wouldn't be able to save Jin Tae-ho until New Year's. However, Nam Gung didn't plan on just farming heads from dungeons. There are many ways to get rich. Come to think of it, So Min didn't know what reward he chose in the dungeon. He then showed the group the Book of Balansa. If you put an item in it, would summon something else. Mi-eung-hun never expected his boss to be into gacha-style items like this. Sacrificing a rare or legendary grade item would be a huge waste. But Nam Gung knew that was the secret of this book. He would offer it a rare item. The book immediately swallowed it and activated Balansa's prank. The book with this version, the item they received would be of the same type but one rank higher, but after the summoning, the book would be incinerated. The highest grade item they currently had was this. Nam Gung looked at Mi-eung-hun. The executioner's blade in his hand was simply swallowed by the book. What they received was the Sword of the Penitent Sinner, an epic-grade weapon. The curse had vanished, but the blood that had soaked into it made the blade incredibly hard. When the blade tastes blood, it unleashes a special power. The sword was now absorbing Nam Gung's blood. Although it wasn't yet an ego sword, being an epic-grade item, it wanted to choose its own master, Mi-eung-hun. This sword seemed perfect for a necromancer like Nam Gung, especially since he didn't have a primary weapon yet. So what was Mi-eung-hun supposed to fight with now Nam Gung immediately handed him Jin Gong-in's badass sword, the very sword that had frozen all the goblins. Nam Gung added that Jin Gong-in had been thoughtful in choosing this sword, and not just for its name, but in reality Jin Gong-in only liked it because it looked freaking cool. He didn't care who got the sword. He just wanted the elixir, silently cursing Nam Gung for being a smooth-talking con artist. A second life or something? No way. Nam Gung said he now held a new title, Goblin Lord. Thanks to that, he could enter their item storage and found 550,000 more than enough to buy the elixir. Jin Gong-in laughed awkwardly. So that's how it was. He'd thought it was some kind of pyramid scheme. With everything settled, Nam Gung told Myung-hun and Ho-jun to go to the press meeting spot. The reporters would be gathering there soon, and he couldn't let the cultists learn his identity. Besides, for the two of them, dealing with reporters would use up less stamina than dungeon crawling with him. Nam Gung had a plan for the two of them. They would pose as cultists and conduct interviews. Myung-hun finally understood why Nam Gung had him deal with the troll beforehand. He looked more like a cultist. The boss truly moves in mysterious ways. Nam Gung's plan was going too smoothly when suddenly Ho-jun appeared, drawing all the attention, which was perfect. He left the situation in their hands. The remaining three then arrived at the hospital's corridor of death. The scene made Nam Gung feel that something was terribly wrong. Jin Gong-in led the way to Jin Taeho's room when a weak voice called out, "Help me!" The voice made Nam Gung stop in his tracks. He turned toward the sound and saw a girl huddled on the ground crying. For help? Nam Gung scanned the area, wondering what had happened. According to the girl, some suspicious people had appeared and turned the hospital into this bloody mess. They killed everyone and took all of their heads. Nam Gung realized it wasn't the work of goblins, but of humans. "Those people might come back. Can you help me up?" the girl asked weakly, holding out her hand. "It's no trouble." Nam Gung reached out, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her up. Meanwhile, the two kids were still running frantically. So-min suddenly heard a strange noise, but Jin Gong-in was too focused on reaching his father to notice. It was only then that they both realized Nam Gung was gone. Jin Gong-in panicked, assuming that since Nam Gung had lived a second life, he must have remembered something important and left. Right now, all he wanted was to get to his father. So-min wanted to find her dad, but she couldn't just abandon Jin Gong-in, who was weaker than her. Besides, her dad was no pushover. Back with Nam Gung, the girl cried out in pain as he squeezed her, wrist revealing an object under her ring. Nam Gung recognized it as one of Sakan's needles. It wasn't as potent as a red hornet's stinger, but a human could easily wield it. It seemed the culprit behind this massacre was this girl playing the damsel in distress. Whoosh! Suddenly she pulled out a knife and slashed at Nam Gung. She couldn't understand how he had seen through her act. Nam Gung didn't beat around the bush. "It's thanks to the agility wormstone I nabbed from the dungeon." She was shocked that a wormstone had already appeared. They weren't items that you see every day, but she figured that was for the best. If Nam Gung had cleared a dungeon, he must have even more rewards, and she would be the one to reap all the benefits. Her expression turned chilling. "But it's a shame your face is just my type. Let me just take it off your corpse, okay? My only type is my wife. Get lost," Nam Gung said coldly, staring at the psycho before him. I went berserk and lunged straight at him with a grin stretching from ear to ear. "I told you, you're not walking out of here alive." Nam Gung gracefully sidestepped, grabbed her arm, and casually tossed her away like a sack of potatoes. She slid into a split, sneering mockingly. "You're nothing special." What a letdown. Nam Gung could have easily torn that crazy woman to shreds, but he had to maintain his public image, even if she was a piece of trash. Killing her offered no benefit, but that was only if people were watching. Right now, it was just the two of them. Nam Gung summoned his blade. The longsword made her gasp in shock. An item like this wasn't something you could just obtain. Even with a mountain of cash, it would be difficult to purchase. Nam Gung didn't care. He would kill her now without fear of judgment. It was also a chance for him to test his new toy. He swung his sword in a single arc. She quickly raised her knife to parry, but in an instant, the knife was sliced in half like tofu, much to her astonishment, in a world where the apocalypse had dawned. Song Ah was like a lion cub with a natural talent for becoming a monster lord. A curious little lion, especially one that was a predator of high intelligence, intrigued by new things and bullying them. But the moment it came face to face with that thing, an overwhelming emotion it had never felt before washed over it: fear. Standing before a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which represented a power beyond words, an absolute power born from a supernatural force. And at this very moment, Song-ah was instinctively fleeing, moving to survive. The man behind her was in her eyes a tyrant. Nam Gung had lost his mind. She regretted provoking the wrong person. At this rate, she was going to be sent to the next life, dead. Soman's voice made Nam Gung's sword halt in midair. He turned, stammering the little girl's name, Ji-on Gong In. Also stepped out from behind him. His face lit up. Seeing his father was unharmed, but the elixir was in Nam Gung's hand. The scene unfolding before them left both children stunned. "Dad, what are you doing?" Soman spoke up. The memory of a conversation flooded back. Into Nam Gung's mind, from his past life, someone had advised him. If you regress, you shouldn't just go around killing people, a hell where humans slaughter one another. If that's what the Supreme Beings want, then you must fight. Against them, Nam Gung, the God-slayer, not a murderer. He snapped back to reality. He had almost struck in front of. His daughter Nam Gung made up an excuse that Song-ah tried to steal money, so he was just scaring her a little. The naive Soman nodded eagerly, while Ji-on Gong In beside her looked on judgmentally. He knew Nam Gung wasn't planning on stopping at just a little scare. Nam Gung shooed the crazy woman away. She quickly seized the opportunity to flee, but her ankle was already broken just from the aura radiating from his sword. Ji-on Gong In tiptoed away. He wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, urging him to hurry to John Tae-ho's side. Before she left, he asked for her name, Chae Song-ah. She stammered in response. In the special treatment room, John Tae-ho was lying on a bed with an oxygen mask. Nam Gung politely greeted and introduced himself, even though the man was in a deep sleep. "Pardon the intrusion." He removed the respirator and poured the elixir into John Tae-ho's mouth. His two eyes slowly fluttered open. At the Disaster Response and Control Center, they were discussing the two superhumans in South Korea being shown on YouTube. According to his observations, the bald soldier Kang Ho-jun had excellent skills, but the blonde girl found his weapon to be pathetic. Even with overwhelming power, relying on a random weapon drop was a bit risky, Anak noted, and that each disciple possesses a different item depending on their country. The blonde girl vehemently denied it, saying, "At least, a disciple should have a rare item. He might just be a disciple like me for all we know. Who can say for sure?" Anak said as he summoned his sword. He was leaning more toward the theory that Myung-hun was a disciple. If that were the case, then Myung-hun could definitely use a unique weapon just like him. If they wanted to uncover Myung-hun's identity, they would have to find Kang Ho-run. The blonde girl objected, saying South Korea wasn't the center of the world and wasn't part of their plans. Of course, Anak knew that. He just wanted to be the center of attention, the one and only savior of humanity. As for Kang Ho-run's group, he would attempt to recruit them. It was best to get them on his side before the disciples made their move. If they refused, then Anak would eliminate them down to the very last one. Somin was stunned to return to her home only to find it burned to the ground. Myung-hun was furious. It must have been those damn goblins who did this for revenge. But looking at the scene, Nam Gung thought that wasn't it. It's likely the Yakshas landed in the wrong spot, and unfortunately their house was it. Somin angrily jumped up and started yanking a Yaksha's head feathers to vent her frustration. The poor girl just wanted to go home and rest, but this mob ended up burning it down. In times like these, all Nam Gung had to do was ask the series author to draw them a new house, but he had already prepared a bunker. Myung-hun and his niece followed him into the forest. He wondered if Nam Gung had prepared this for the apocalypse, but actually, Nam Gung just set it up in case North Korea accidentally launched a missile. A hidden bunker deep in the forest was opened. Somin stepped inside with a sigh. She never liked staying in this bunker. Myung-hun was more optimistic, pointing out that at least they had food and essential supplies. This was the moment for Nam Gung to use the building fortification item he'd received, the Goblin's Fortress Orb. As its level increases, the shelter also expands. Nam Gung activated the level 1 orb, and the surrounding scenery began to transform into a classic style, much to Myung-hun's awe. A few clumps of dirt crumbled from the ceiling, letting in a sliver of light and leaving Soman speechless. Even with the upgrade, the little girl still couldn't stand this cave. Nam Gung comforted her, promising that once he leveled up the orb, this place would become a safe base for them. Myung-hun offered some forced praise with a laugh. In contrast, Soman just asked one question. When are we moving out? Nam Gung avoided the question by looking at his phone. By now, Anik had probably already contacted Ho Run. He looked at the list of the 8 martial stars on his phone. It was time to begin his plan. Aboard a commercial flight, Anik received a call from an unknown number, but he answered it anyway. The leader of the Bone Guides Guild has his eyes on you now. Be careful, the voice on the other end said before hanging up. Needless to say, this news left Anik in a state of profound shock. The Bone Guides Guild was an assembly of high-ranking disciples with the power of foresight and overwhelming ability that was still prone to prediction errors. If the call was legitimate, it meant the disciple's guide already knew he was on his way to Korea. Anik fell into deep thought and called Johanna. He decided to postpone the meeting with Kang Ho-jun. There were a few things they needed to change. Meanwhile, Nam Gung was feeling smug after his call to mess with Anik. In any case, the man was now right in the palm of his hand. Myung-hun climbed up curious if Nam Gung had called to change the meeting time and location. Nam Gung explained that he told Anik that he was being tracked by Ninagawa Erika, but in this current life he and Erika hadn't even met yet. I'll make Anik believe that Erika is here. Anik is a cautious and suspicious type. This weakness will help me dig up more necessary information. As for Erika, I also have a plan to lure her here. Once Erika sees the future that we create, she'll be dying to come here. Hearing Nam Gung's meticulously detailed plan, Myung-hun could only gulp. Good thing he wasn't going up against Nam Gung. He wondered what would happen if all 3 apostles came to Korea, but Nam Gung said it was nothing. They would just protect Korea in his stead. At that moment, Anik's party had landed. Johanna wondered where they should go now. Anik said to scout around the 63 square and then prepare, but Hunson's stomach was rumbling loudly. He wanted to get something to eat, saying you can't fight on an empty stomach. Johanna wondered where he even learned that phrase. Hansen had lived in Korea before, so he'd picked it up. Anik agreed. There was a chance of a brawl later, so eating to build up strength was a good idea. He wanted to go to a 5-star Michelin steakhouse. Hansen vehemently protested, saying if you're in a foreign country, you have to try the local cuisine. He then volunteered to lead the food tour. Johanna sighed. She figured that after this tiny country had just endured 2 hell gates, there would be nothing left to enjoy. A short while later, at a restaurant over 4 years old, Anik was having to remind Johanna to eat slower, that no one was going to steal her food. He looked at the kimchi on his plate with disgust. This was not his kind of flavor. Anik Koreans eat kimchi every day. You eat a spoonful of rib soup, then put a piece of kimchi on top, Johanna said, while chomping away. Seeing Anik hesitate, she immediately grabbed his hair, pried open his mouth, and shoved the kimchi inside. Hansen watched this scene with delight. He still had many other delicious dishes to show them. A complete reversal from her initial attitude, Johanna immediately told him to lead the way. Trying on a hanbok for the first time made Johanna blush. She looked so feminine, a stark contrast to her usual tough-as-nails appearance. Afterwards, Hansen took them to eat fried chicken and tteokbokki, and a souvenir photo of the 3 of them was an absolute must. Before they knew it, it was late afternoon. Johanna felt that Korea was surprisingly peaceful despite having gone through the hell gates. This couldn't be explained simply by the existence of a single apostle. Anik looked at her sarcastically. Most days, she's like a roaring lion, but today, she's so gentle and sweet it's throwing me off. Johanna flinched, coughed dryly, and then summoned the group to the rendezvous point. After all, the mission had to come first. On the 80th floor of the LAN MC Tower, a girl in a kimono was standing and watching the evening sunset. Behind her, a familiar shadow approached. The regressor that the Supreme Being, the guide in the mist, mentioned. "That's you, isn't it?" Nam Gung. At that moment, Anik was striding towards the meeting point. At this altitude, there would be no chance for an assassination or interference. He was sure Myung-hun couldn't pull any tricks. "Watch out for eavesdroppers!" Johanna's voice came through the earpiece. She decided to turn off her comms and wait in the designated area. A voice calling out Anik Chaman's name made him turn around. "Kang!" Ho-jun walked up and introduced himself. He immediately extended his hand for a handshake, complimenting him on being even bigger in person than in the videos. Kang. Ho-jun walked right past his outstretched hand. Anik was shocked when his moonshadow skill was detected. This skill allows him to see what skills his opponent possesses. If Hojun knew about it, he probably knew about his other skills as well, maybe even the solar flare skill that he used to recruit Johanna and Hunsen. And if Kang Hojun knew of their existence, then perhaps they were also hiding somewhere nearby. He speculated as much, but still acted cooperative to fish for more information during their conversation. He then cautiously asked if Kang Hojun was the hunter of magical entities in X-Chan, and Kang Hojun admitted it. He said it was only thanks to the support of the authorities and the cooperation of the people the two of them just bantered back and forth. After exchanging some meaningless words, Anek's patience finally paid off. Kang Ho said he should meet the person who gave him the weapon. The elevator doors opened, revealing Choi Myung-hoon, and Anek smirked smugly. Everything was going exactly as he had planned. He extended his hand for an introduction, but Myung-hoon avoided the handshake instead, scratching his head as a greeting. This reaction made Anek suspect that he already knew about his skill, which could only mean his ability had been exposed, knowing that Myung-hoon was formerly a soldier. Anek disingenuously praised him, saying his strikes were incredibly precise, unlike that ham actor, him, and Myung-hoon also played along with him, saying if a star like you, Anek, hadn't spread the prophecy in the press, then who would have ever known about it? No prophet would willingly reveal their identity. Does that mean you're also a prophet? Anek probed, but Myung-hoon didn't yet know if he was friend or foe, so he couldn't reveal everything. Anek was left speechless and laughed awkwardly. You're right, a leader has to be skeptical like that. You really have a way with words I knew you would understand, Myung-hoon replied with a smile. But then, his expression suddenly changed. St. Mary's Catholic Hospital in Ganora-jin. You've got a real eye for picking locations. Anek's face contorted. That's where Johanna and Hansen are waiting, but even a prophet couldn't possibly have known that. He then flew into a rage. He launched into a tirade about how the world was on the brink of collapse, that as prophets they had to team up, and that modern weapons would soon be useless. They must lead humanity to save the world by founding an international association, so he came here to recruit him and introduce a new comrade. After spewing his long-winded speech to Myung-hoon, Anek panted heavily. The air suddenly became tense, and Myung-hoon felt that this lunatic was more interested in becoming a hero than in saving humanity. He just wanted to control the entire world through his transcontinental guild nonsense. Anek forced a laugh, not expecting Myung-hoon to see through his ulterior motives, but Myung-hoon, on the other hand, had no intention of joining. Anek immediately summoned his sword and aimed it at Myung-hoon. A panicked Kang Hojun quickly leaped in to push him aside. The blade grazed his face, drawing blood from Myung-hoon. Anek Chaman had finally shown his true filthy colors here today. If he let Myung-hoon live, he would become a massive obstacle, so just die for me now. Cutting back to Myung-hoon's room. With only two people present, Nam Gung greeted Ninagawa Erika with a long time. No, see, this phrase made Erika wonder if they had known each other in a past life. Nam Gung didn't answer. He just asked her about the future he had engineered, where Anek Chaman and Choi Myung-hoon had met, with Choi Myung-hoon acting like the guiding prophet, while Anek wanted to kill him, to be precise. He was the guide for the fog prophet. If Anek knew it was Erika and not Myung-hoon, then he would, obviously, come after her, so she had no choice but to form an alliance with Nam Gung because he is a regressor and knows the future when she loses her power. According to Nam Gung's theory, that's why she came to Korea, and here she would have to play by his rules, but swallowing her pride and coming this far was a very wise move. Erika admitted that she couldn't remember this future as clearly as him, but could see faint glimpses of it. I want to kill the guide of the fog prophet. Anek's voice blared from the phone. Is this the future that's about to unfold on the other end of the line? Choi Myung-hoon tells Erika that a guy named Anek wants to kill her. Anek freezes in confusion, wondering where that name suddenly came from. Who the hell is Erika? A massive shadow suddenly appears behind him, and as he turns around, he's met with a massive punch, then his entire face sending him flying. He props himself up with his sword, shocked, wondering when someone else had appeared to ambush him. You don't need to know. The only thing you need to know is that Erika's enemies must die, a hardcore simp declares. Only then does Anek realize he's been played and starts cursing Myung-hoon. Myung-hoon smiles innocently. He never claimed to have any powers. He just casually threw out some bait, and who knew Anek would swallow it whole. Furious, Anek screams, "What did you say, you bastard? Don't get distracted." Igor immediately punches him in the gut, making Anek's eyes bulge. He collapses, clutching his stomach and cursing. A normal person would have died from a punch like that. Just who is Erica to be able to manipulate this monster? But he still really doesn't know if Myung-hoon is a prophet, if he created a fake persona named Erica, or if they are all just minions of Erica's. "You were just thinking about Erica, weren't you?" A voice rings in his ear, startling Anik. A punch, carrying the full resentment of the simp, flies toward him. Meanwhile, Nam Gung is still talking with Erica. That Anik guy has another scheme, something that any human would desire but few can achieve. You could say he is a very special individual. Besides the 8 supreme entities, the Sun and Moon Spectator is the one who bestows the most benefits upon his apostle. He poses as a noble entity, of great virtue, fulfilling every human desire. However, what the Sun and Moon Spectator truly wants is to see the holy temple flooded with the greed of mankind. Anek Chaman is the perfect candidate to fulfill that depraved hobby. Erica changes the subject to Nam Gung. She doubts whether he is any different from Anek. Her prophetic ability is still incomplete, so she needs a promise that he will not betray her in the future and a guarantee that he will not harm humanity. Nam Gung exudes an overwhelming aura. Erica's hidden question is actually about her own fate if she doesn't listen to the words of a regressor. Meanwhile, Anik has dodged Igor's punch. He's frustrated he doesn't even know who the heck Erica is. He swings his galaxy sword slicing through the concrete pillar next to Igor. Igor is more agile than he looks, but when he turns around, his expression changes as he can't find Anik. At some point, he had teleported like a ghost right behind him. Although he's an actor, the skills he learned weren't from Hollywood, but from his organization SLS. Anik again uses the Galaxy Sword. The name SLS surprises the two of them. That was the infamous Assassin's Guild that disbanded several years ago. Kang Hojun sees the tense situation and suggests Myung-hoon should go lend Igor a hand, but in Myung-hoon's eyes, Igor's fighting spirit is boiling over like a berserker's. While struggling to dodge the attacks, Igor turns and mouths an SOS signal. "See, he just told us to get lost. This is a battle between 2 men. So we should just let Igor enjoy it." Myung-hoon confidently translates, and somehow Kang Hojun buys it completely. At this rate, Igor might go down in history as the first person to defeat an apostle bare-handed. "You damn bastards, help me!" Igor yells in frustration. He had tried mouthing it to be less obvious, but his 2 supposed allies were just standing there cracking jokes. The 2 of them awkwardly pull out their weapons. Turns out it was all just Myung-hoon's personal interpretation. Anik holds nothing back, unleashing a powerful galaxy slash. Just as Hojun and Myung-hoon stepped forward to parry the blow for Ego, he was the only one sent flying far away as Anik grabbed him by the collar, preparing to engage in battle. He never expected him to be able to block the galactic sword, but the blade he was using today was different from the one he reviewed on YouTube. Myung-hoon remained silent, not dignifying his nonsensical trash talk. Anek decided to keep one alive for interrogation while the rest had to die. Now that Tannen's sword was bonded with Nam Gung, Myung-hoon could no longer control it, but this time he pleaded with the sword to fight alongside him just one more time. After all, it was once an executioner's blade. A blood-red aura enveloped Myung-hoon, making Anik exclaim, "What the hell is that?" His eyes widened in shock. As Myung-hoon swung his sword, Anik split his slash in 2. Just then, Kang Hojun popped up from the left, taunting, "So the Rat Hand organization is nothing special after all." Anik blocked Hojun's fist with a single arm. "An active-duty soldier? Impressive. But there are 3 former members of his organization here." In that moment of surprise, Johanna appeared from behind, striking the nape of Hojun's neck with her elbow and sending him tumbling to the ground. Over on the other side, Hansen had already taken care of Myung-hoon, and he suggested to Anik that they should retreat now that an escape route was open. But Anik disagreed. Before leaving, he wanted to borrow the 3 heads here. Hansen recognized Ego from his time with the Sandcat Assassin organization in Russia. No matter who was behind this whole setup, they must be terrifyingly powerful to make him switch sides. Killing him would needlessly provoke that organization. "So I'm supposed to be scared of them," Anek shot back. He hated this feeling more than anything. "It's not that." Suddenly, Hansen was grabbed by the nape of his neck from behind. Johanna was startled. She was certain she had struck Hojun's C3 vertebra, so how was he still conscious? Heh 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 ah. Chilling laugh escaped from Myung-hoon. The C3 vertebra? What the hell is that? For a guy like Hojun, such a thing doesn't exist because he's a monster. Johanna was shocked. So that Hojun bastard was hiding his true power this whole time. Lying on the ground, Myung-hoon grinned with pride. Hojun is the apex predator of all mammals, a man who has transcended humanity. Kang Hojun effortlessly tossed Hansen away with a single arm, making Johanna wary. She realized Hojun had forced all the blood into his muscles. In that case, it's time to bring out the heavy artillery. Johanna pulled out a whip made from the tail of a nine-tailed fox and began lashing out wildly at Hojun. Hojun caught the whip and yanked Johanna toward him. Showing no mercy, he landed a solid punch to her face, sending her crashing to the ground. But Hojun felt no impact. He hadn't actually hit her. At that very moment, Johanna appeared from behind and locked onto Kang Hojun in a chokehold, her arms pressing tightly against his neck. Myung-hoon was astonished. In a split second, she had dodged his sweeping attack as expected of an S-class. Not only were her combat senses incredible, but she also saw through the weakness of an elite fighter a rear choke to cut off blood circulation. How did that, an Overth King guy, manage to recruit such a prodigy Myung-hoon felt that maybe he should do something useful with his life for a change. Anik signaled Johanna to hold Hojun tight so he could slice his body vertically. Just as the sword strike was launched, Myung-hoon appeared in the nick of time. Just seeing the punchable face of the bastard who tricked him, like a fool, made Anik go insane. "How are you still standing? You gonna spout more nonsense?" "Heh, I guess you could call it persistence." Myung-hoon continued his pointless monologue. "Truly disgusting." Anik, infuriated, slashed with great force. Myung-hoon complimented him. "You're tough, but not tough enough to break my persistence." Anik, enraged, charged forward, slashing relentlessly as Myung-hoon parried the blows. He parried continuously, but after just a few strikes his hands were exhausted and trembling violently. Anik taunted smugly, "Where did all that persistence go?" Myung-hoon suddenly realized he couldn't achieve a 100% resonance with the sword's soul because Nam Gung's mana wasn't there. Getting this far with a borrowed sword was already an incredible feat, but being unable to defeat Anik made him feel a deep sense of frustration. Now he could only stall until the moment Nam Gung had mentioned Anik pressed his blade closer, taunting Myung-hoon. For every word Myung-hoon spoke, this overthinking bastard spoke 10. Damn it! "Help me!" A pathetic scream made both swordsmen pause. In confusion over on the other side, Kang Hojun was furiously slamming Johanna into the wall so hard that it cracked, but she couldn't. "Let go, because this monster would kill everyone here." Johanna's voice was a faint whisper. "Please, Anik. Or anyone, just help me quickly," while Hojun continued to relentlessly pummel her. Watching this horrific scene, the two fighters felt a chill run down their spines. Finally, Johanna's strength gave out, and she let go her entire body, falling only to be caught by Han-san. "You did well, Johanna. Damn, this bald bastard showing up late and spouting such provocative lines." Kang Hojun was stunned. "How is this?" Hairless guy, still alive, Han-san confidently stated that he was highly trained and not easy to take down, but in reality it hurt like hell, and he had even been knocked unconscious, but now he had to bluff to save face. Surprising, but I'm stronger. Hojun declared. Han-san taunted back, saying he must have put all his stat points into muscle because his Korean was even worse than his, and he pulled out a high-tech gadget showing off a shockwave bomb created by the Anka Republic for its soldiers. A massive explosion made Myung-hoon anxiously call out Hojun's name. "You fool! How dare you take your eyes off this brute Anik?" And so in a single moment of distraction, Myung-hoon's blood was spilled. After dealing with those two persistent leeches, the three villains breathed a sigh of relief. "Now it's time for the execution," Anik said. He wouldn't kill the ego as Han-san suggested. Only Hojun and Myung-hoon. Johanna stood before Hojun, clutching her whip, filled with resentment. He almost snapped her spine. "And to that damn goblin, I'm going to split his back open. Get the hell out of here, you bastards." Myung-hoon mumbled, "Huh? What?" While Anik was still stunned, a sudden tremor shook the building. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted in frustration. After looking out the window, he couldn't contain his rage. In the sky above, thousands of monsters were falling. From the eye of the second Hellgate, Anak cursed son of a bitch as Myung-hun struggled to lift his ringing phone, handing the device to Anak, who impatiently snatched it. "Hell, what's going on? Is this Anak?" The familiar voice on the other end made him see red. He was certain the person on the line was the mastermind behind the Erica incident. He swore he would hunt down and exterminate their entire bloodline. Nam Gung ignored his rage and simply told Anak to do whatever it takes to survive and return. Anak's face darkened. It was one scheme after another. He had never been played like this before. Hanging up, Nam Gung wished him luck on surviving and becoming the prophet, the hero who will save all of South Korea. Damn it! Anak threw Myung-hun's phone to the ground. He madly resolved to kill them all. It didn't matter who they were. He'd execute every last one of them. Johanna had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "Watch out," Han-san yelled, and then leaped to pull Johanna out of the way just before an arrow pierced her. Anak had mistaken it for a sniper shot, but when he looked again at the arrow, he was completely stunned. An arrow could fly all the way up to this floor with the force of a bullet while he was still lost. In his thoughts, another arrow whizzed past, followed by a relentless barrage of arrows aimed directly at him, forcing him to do nothing but. Tucking her tail between her legs, Johanna retreated, but not before shooting Hojun an angry glare. She would definitely deal with him next time. I almost croaked. Myung-hun struggled to sit up and check on Hojun, who was still lying motionless on the ground, completely exhausted. If he was forced to do that one more time, he would flat out refuse. Meanwhile, Erica was observing the second gate. It had opened earlier because the first gate closed ahead of schedule, but she still couldn't understand how Nam Gung could know the future had been altered even though he was a regressor. Nam Gung confidently replied that he didn't just know the future, he was also privy to a few schemes that others were not. Surely Erica also knew. Many dungeons had appeared all across the continent after the first Hellgate closed, and many individuals with powerful abilities had found and cleared them. That was the hidden condition of the Hellgate. After all the dungeons in the world were cleared, the second Hellgate would open. In Nam Gung's previous life, the last country to finish clearing its dungeons was Japan. If Erica was here, it meant the dungeons in Japan were already cleared. That's why he summoned her as soon as the gate opened. Erica cautiously watched the man before her. He could deduce everything without even needing to see the future. Nam Gung told her not to be so cautious. This timeline wasn't playing out exactly like his previous one, and his predictions were also partly just good luck. In his past life, he had survived for a full 25 years in hell, and his memories of these aspects were starting to fade. So Erica the prophet, who could foresee the future, would be more accurate than him. "What do you want from me?" Erica asked bluntly. Nam Gung didn't need much. He just needed her to close the second Hellgate with him. The first one was easy, but the second one was something he couldn't handle alone. Besides, the airports and seaports were all on lockdown now, so Erica couldn't return to Japan. Anyway, it seemed Nam Gung had her cornered this time. "We will be your support," Erica said, summoning the warriors of Nin Gawa. Just as Nam Gung had predicted, she never traveled alone. The leader of Interessor Gaesum Mat introduced himself. To have an entire squad of warriors in Korea, Erica was certainly well prepared. She smiled. "Who's to say, if you're a friend or a foe? This is just a necessary precaution." Nam Gung nodded in understanding. Now he would get to the main point, the strategy for clearing the gate of hell. Step 1 is to simply ignore it. Gaesum Mat was confused, wondering if Nam Gung was trolling them. Nam Gung denied it. Someone else would handle things inside this Hellgate, but the final boss wouldn't appear in there. This information made them both curious. Nam Gung gestured with his eyes for them to look outside. In the sky, a massive vortex appeared. A colossal sea serpent emerged. It was the boss of the second Hellgate, and it considered all creatures in the ocean its prey. Its sheer scale made the group disbelieve their own eyes, but Nam Gung already had a strategy, all magical. Serpentine creatures have a weak point, a reverse scale located under their chin. If one simply had to break that scale, it would be easy, but weapons below the rare grade are useless against it. As far as Erica knew, the only person with a weapon of rare grade or higher was that one insufferable guy. Anak Cho Man. Gaesum Mat wondered if Nam Gung would really let that Anak guy be the one to destroy the scale, but Nam Gung wasn't that naive. If he did that, all the achievements would go to him. Gasum Mat started speculating, "Don't tell me Nam Gung plans to steal his sword and then go. Fight it himself?" Nam Gung smirked mysteriously. "That's one way to do it, but it doesn't sound very civilized." Suddenly a sword shot up like a rocket from the ground below, shattering the glass window. Luckily, it didn't hit anyone. The sword embedded itself directly into the ceiling to the utter astonishment of everyone. Gasum looked through the window and saw an archer had shot that sword from below from where Jeon Taiho and his four-eyed son were. Nam Gung grabbed the sword. If the weapon made it through, then Myung-hoon must be all right. Now he has a sword to strike. The reverse scale. He is just waiting for Gatsuwada to be ready. The leader of Interlac gripped his sword tightly. "I am always ready."